We're gonna try to redeem the time a little bit here while Brother Fay will take over when he gets here. Until then, you know what leadership means. Anybody have a testimony? No. If you get in trouble in church, anybody have a testimony? Anybody have, do that until, but we're not going to do that. We're going to ask Brother Arnold to come up here and have a chair. Thank you, Brother Arnold. You're going to sit right here. Brother Sam's, we got a chair for you to listen. Just for Brother Mowry, we have a chair for. Okay, there's 3 of them right here. Then if one of them questions you want to ask them, or they can respond, or somebody can take it until Brother Fay gets here, that we got a chair for you, so we're going to treat you really well. We're going to have. Thank you, Brother Nick. Brother Sam's, if you would. There you go. And then Brother Fay, we can let him, we can let him take over when he gets here. But that way, if you have questions, all these have plenty of experience in ministry, and give you a chance so you can look at your questions. If you feel free to ask one of them a question, we can do that. Well, Brother Arnold manned this right here.
I have a question. How did we get roped into this?
If anybody has a question, if we can bring you a mic if you want to ask it. Anybody have a question for them yet? Very good. Jason, thank you.
It's going to be easy. No questions.
All right, what do you believe are the qualities of a good leader?
Qualities of a good leader. Some qualities of a good leader.
You're the expert.
Well, integrity. Somebody who doesn't walk the line is not a very good leader, and be a good example. And in other words, for me, in the years, if I want to tell other people you ought to visit, I ought to be visiting and set the example. That would be one thing. So I did a lot of visiting, and I would take others with me, and so I think integrity is, so that you, that's enough for me.
I would say faithfulness, willing to listen, showing support to your staff and the people of your church, the people that you're trying to lead, that you would show them faithfulness and let them know that they were part of the team. You can't do it all on your own. There's the expert.
Yeah, I agree with what's been said completely. Probably my first thing that came to my mind was integrity. I think consistency is critical as well. And the other thing that I would say, just as sort of the highlights, along with faithfulness, consistency, would be a deep respect for the personhood of the people with whom you're working.
If you are looking at someone getting ready to take a position of leadership, what would be some red flags for you gentlemen that you would say, I'm worried that this person's not going to make a good leader, and how would you broach the subject with them?
We're split, man.
Oh, this is terrible. Forgive me. Sit down. Go ahead.
Well, I do feel better. Thank the Lord. I was not feeling good a few minutes ago, but I'm back at it now. I bounce like a rubber ball. Where are we at? Okay.
What would be some red flags for you looking at someone coming into leadership that you personally, having been a leader, having seen all kinds of leaders fail and succeed, what would be some red flags to you making you worry about their leadership? And how would you, if you were in a relationship with that person, how would you broach those issues with that person?
Boy, you start me out heavy. Woo. I think I'm getting sick again. Oh, boy. Oh, my goodness. Well, my first response is, is begging God for wisdom. You know, if any among you lack wisdom, let him ask who God will give it to all men liberally and upbraideth not. And I stand on that promise every day of my life because I'm a little bit retarded. So I have to get all the help I can get. So, you know, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. It requires, first of all, it requires godly wisdom. That's different than worldly wisdom. It requires godly wisdom. It requires a lot of patience. A lot of patience. It requires go slow. You don't rush in where angels fear to tread. You know, go slow. You know, it's not that God can't instantly solve problems, but He usually takes us on a journey. And so, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's as good as I come up with right now. Yeah, that's right. Especially if you need to do a little background check or find out a track record. Absolutely.
Brother Mowry, Brother Fay would look a little better if you're sitting there right by him. Why don't you sit up there by him?
Yeah, please do.
And Brother Arnold, you can sit up there. You've been friends for a long time. And just in case he needs help, I think that would be great. Just get him.
Oh,
We're
good,
honored
yeah.
that you would sit up there
Right up
together.
there.
You look like a good team up there
Oh,
together.
I feel better already.
Yes, I know you do.
3 against 1's always better.
Yes, I know. Anybody else have a question?
Yeah, I will add this quickie. But if someone comes into your church and, whoom, they want to get involved in leadership, that's you're right. That's red flags everywhere. Yeah, you go slow. And they might be really, really good, and they might be a blessing, but they might be there. And I've had it happen, and I just back off. I mean, and I love them, but I don't push that kind of stuff. You know.
Another thing, I had a fellow that attended my church, and so he took me out for dinner and proceeded to tell me the things that he would do if he was the pastor. I thought that was quite interesting. But he wasn't the pastor. And really, we pastors, we're willing to take suggestions. I don't think any pastor wants to be a failure. But at the same time, you have to be in the spirit of the Lord and walk the way the Lord wants you to walk.
Yeah, is David Bubb here? David?
No,
David.
he's hiding in the woodwork.
He's hiding in the woodwork. Maybe he got sick too. David had an experience like that at one time, many years ago. But someone came into his church, very gifted, very talented, very aggressive. I mean, she was really aggressive, and really wanted to take the church over. And good old David, he didn't put up with that very long, and she was history. But I had it happen where I am now. I had it happen probably about 3 years ago. A guy came in, and kind of like you, he had way too much information. You know, I mean, he knew everything we ought to be doing and not doing. No. Wake up, Doc.
Sometimes across the years when I thought of God calling me to preach, I thought, why didn't he call some of these others that know so much about it, you know? I felt very inadequate. And now if somebody comes, I had this happen recently at the Gospel Center. In my experience, I don't know that I ever asked to sing or preach. I never in 60 years. But when people come and they're asking, and I had somebody come not so long ago, and I knew they were wanting to sing. If somebody comes, and they'll be a part of your church if you let them sing or you let them preach and so forth. I've just lost somebody just very recently, and I thought they ought to be, and I just don't go for that. No, I just won't course that along. If people want to come and they're going to be a part of the church and in it, then I maybe have them sing or something. But just to have them sing so they come, that's not my.
That's right. You know, if I mentioned this morning, every service that we're in ought to be better because we're there.
That's true.
Okay, but that doesn't mean we should be able to, that we should be doing everything that's being done either. You know, it should be better because of our spirit. It should be better because of what we contribute. Not because of our singing or our preaching or any, you know, not because of something we accomplish really, but it's the heart. You know, it's the, you got to be a good follower, I think, before you can be a good leader. And if a person has to lead, they're not a good leader. I think your best leaders would really rather follow, but they lead because God puts them there.
Brother Avery was here, I don't know how many years ago, and he preached a message on followership. I never forgot.
That's right.
Yeah, and so before we can be in leadership, we need to be. It needs to be followership, right?
Jesus said, "Follow me."
I don't have.
He said, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." The fishers of men did not come before the following, right?
Got to follow Jesus first, right?
I don't think leaders are pushers. I don't think leaders are pushers.
No. You can't push a rope anyway.
No, you can't. You know, I've had fellas, they're afraid somebody's going to leave the church. But I found a long time ago, people go to church where they want to go. And every time somebody left, God brought somebody in. Amen? And we can't be afraid of the church down the road. A lot of times, you know, well, the church down the road, but look how they're doing it. It didn't make a difference how they're doing it. If they have something that people want or need, people are going to go to church there. And so as pastors, we just have to do our best to give them what they need. And not always what they want, what they need.
A few years ago, we had 16 people Easter morning walk out for the last time. The next Sunday, we had eight people left on an Easter morning after the service. They left to leave completely. And the next Sunday, we had 16 brand new people.
That's good.
Hallelujah. I tell you another thing that really helps to keep people, that you didn't even ask the question, but I'm going to answer it anyway, is I had, and I told this before here, but some of you weren't here. There was an engineer that came to Marcy when we were pastoring there. He and his wife, wonderful couple. And they came one Sunday. They were total strangers to all of us and us to them. But they stayed, you know. And so I remember one Sunday morning after church, I said, you know, I happen to know that you visited every church in this county before you came here. And I want to know why you came. Since then, they moved to another state. But anyway, I said, I want to know why you came and why you stayed. And you know what I wanted him to say, don't you? I wanted him to say, because of your marvelous preaching. He never said a word about my preaching. He said, the first Sunday we were here, we had 7 invitations for dinner. He said, I knew we were good for 7 weeks. That's good. You know, yeah, the spirit of hospitality is so powerful. It really is. It really is. Oh, wow.
Well, the pastor can't do it on his own.
Yeah, no.
Takes everybody working together.
Yeah,
Now, before we started, I was talking to these guys here, and we were mentioning about John Maxwell's one definition of leadership. You know, leadership's influence, nothing more, nothing less. But I was wondering if you could maybe unpack that a little bit more, because that seems kind of broad.
Well, that would take more time than we have. I'll try to come up with a Reader's Digest version of that. But yes, and John is right. and I've heard him say it many times. I'm part of his organization for several years. But, you know, leadership is definitely influence. It's not position, it's not title, it's influence. In some organizations, people are following someone that has no title, but they're the ones that have the influence. You know, and then to kind of piggyback onto that, who really has the most influence? I don't think it's always the brightest and the sharpest and all that. I think the person that, and from my perspective, the person that has the greatest influence is the person that demonstrates genuine, unselfish love. Really cares, not, you know, some people care because they're manipulative. You know, I had a friend years ago, and he's a friend now, and he's a lot better. He's upgraded himself. But he used to be really, really friendly with me if there was something I had that he wanted. You know, and people can detect that. You know, people aren't stupid. You know, you need to love people unconditionally, not because you're going to, not even because you're going to get them to come to church. I have, and again, I don't mean this doesn't sound boastful, but I got some friends in Mocksville, North Carolina that will probably never come to my church, but we're good friends.
Yes, sir.
And maybe there's a little bit of an ulterior motive there, but I mean, in the back of my mind, if it's all right to confess this fault, I often think, you know, if I build a friendship with this person, and they may never come to my church, but they may know somebody that will. In fact, I've had that happen. I've got people that do not come to my church, that whenever they recommend a church, they don't recommend their own, they recommend mine. I mean, how can that happen? Well, because I built a relationship with them unconditionally. I never even tried. I don't even try to get people to come to my church. They go to another church. I don't. But I make a friend with everybody I can. Wherever, whether they go to church or not, and wherever they go to church, doesn't matter to me. I make a friend. So, yeah, our motives are really important when it comes to all of this.
I heard something of William Booth when the Salvation Army was starting in the slums of England. Apparently, the fervor of winning souls had caught to such a pitch it was way outside of his personal touch or grasp. It just was exploding and going faster than he could handle himself. So there was one account where some young man, there was something going on in some part of the city, and the young man came to him with a suggestion and said, I don't know, we need to do such and such and such. And he said, I think William Booth's words were something to the effect of, well, you're in charge, and just report back to me in 2 weeks. That challenged me, but then at the same time, I had a lot of other questions thinking, if you find somebody that has that kind of a leadership aptitude, I guess what I'm trying to find out is what is the qualities, or what are the, I guess when you're entrusting that some other people's souls are influenced by this individual, and they're coming almost to you for the thumbs up, so to speak. How do you handle that, and I know some of it is the Spirit of God, but I'm just wondering if there's something like practical or tangible that you can realize where it's like, I don't want to snuff this person out, and at the same time, I don't want to put them out there too soon. So how do you gauge how to, basically allow them to be that leader in that kind of a capacity where there's more at stake?
The first thought that comes to my mind is the ability and the willingness to empower others. When I worked for AB Tractor and Equipment many years ago, before God called me to preach, the vice president of the corporation, when I would go to that office with any kind of I would go with an executive question, And I remember the vice president saying to me many, many, many times, and it stuck with me all these years. I still think about it. The statement was made, "You do what you think is best. I trust you." Wow. I mean, that empowered me. I mean, not empowered me in a sense to give me the ability to do it, but it made me, I was very young, and I mean, to be trusted. There's a book out, a tremendous book, The Speed of Trust. If you don't have it, you ought to get it. When you trust someone, that enables them. When you empower them. In a case like, he was a master at that, by the way. He was literally a master at that, and that's why the work spread. That's why multitudes were affected by that ministry. It was because, well, there was one man there that really was a tremendous influence in many people's lives. He enabled others. John Wesley was the same way. They enabled others. They empowered others. They encouraged others. If a man keeps all the power to himself, he'll never grow. He'll never amount to anything. But it's when you hand your power over to another person, when you delegate and you show confidence and you show trust. When someone says, "I trust you," that's a powerful statement. And frankly, I use that quite often. In my own church, somebody will ask me, a kind of an administrative question, and if I have a real strong opinion, I'm not afraid to tell it. But often I will say, "I want you to do what you think is best. I trust you." And I learned that from Abley Tractor and Equipment. And I think Jesus did that. He told the disciples, "You feed them." Now, obviously, he broke the loaves and fish, but Jesus didn't serve the fish and the loaves to the people. He served it to the disciples, and the disciples served it to the people. And if we as leaders, if we do everything, we're not leaders. In fact, the more we can hand off, the stronger our organization becomes. See, when you hand off a responsibility and you give it to someone, you demonstrate trust and you strengthen them, and they feel enabled. Even people that don't automatically feel enabled. I mean, most people feel inadequate, really. There's a few that have flipped that and think they can do everything, but most people feel inadequate, really. But when we express trust and confidence in someone, they'll step to the plate. I mean, and I did that myself when I was young. I didn't think I could do some of the things that the corporation thought I could, but they handed it to me with trust, and I said, "Man, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway." It enabled me. It's empowering to be trusted. I don't know if that helps you or answers your question, but and like Brother Maury has indicated, you got to be careful not to go too fast with that. But as the Spirit leads you, and as you see, you have to identify character before talent. Character always trumps talent. Okay, somebody may have ability, but if they don't have the character that matches it, you got to really back away. But if they got character enables a person to do what they ought to do in the way they ought to do it. And so, if you're going to judge anything, I'd rather be a greater judge of character than a judge of talent.
Were you wanting to say something down there, brother?
Oh, I don't know. I wanted to ask Brother Fay if he ever heard this, that teamwork makes a dream.
Yeah, you've heard me say that for years. And I believe it, really. Bible math is 1 + 1 = 3 or more. Now, you didn't learn that in algebra class, but that's Bible math.
That's good.
If one can turn 1,000, the Bible says 2 can turn 10,000 to flight. That's the multiplication factor that I talked about this morning. Jesus blessing the loaves and fishes, and that multiplication factor. So teamwork works that way. Churches grow because more people are on the team.
That's right.
Right. I wish I I preach a message to the young preachers, things that I wish I would have known when I started out. And one is the importance of building a team.
Yeah, yeah.
And putting trust in them. That's the
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know that teamwork makes the dream work is certainly not original. I'm not smart enough to come up with something like that.
I thought you were.
No. That's a John Maxwell thing, and
I never read it in any of his books.
he wrote, one of them. He has a title that way: "Teamwork makes the dream work." No. I'm sorry. Teamwork. No, maybe that is a title. I don't know. It was so many centuries ago. I can't remember.
I read it, I forgot.
Yeah.
I thought it came from you. Right.
Go ahead. I'll take credit. That's okay.
Credit granted.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Together a long time.
We have, Doc. It's been a joy too. I love working with this guy. It's awesome. I'm telling you what. You know, this convention really exists. I get a lot of the credit, but right here's the guy. In fact, he came to me. We were at the National Bus Outreach Convention that Wally Beebe and Jack Hiles and all those guys, put on. We went to get our engines fired up, and I remember we were sitting down after one of the sessions, and Brother Arnold, he looked up at me and he said, "Fay, we need one of these in our movement." Remember that? Yeah. Yeah. So he's really the guy. He's really the guy, and he inspired me, and here we are.
Question right here.
Yeah, just curious. What's a daily schedule look like for you now or when you were a pastor?
It's yeah. No, there's some specific things that I do. I'm not saying that's what anybody else has to do, but there's some very specific things that I do every single day of my life, and it's intensely focused for me. I read a chapter in Proverbs every day of my life, every day. I mean, I read a chapter in Proverbs. I have other Bible readings beside that, but that's part of my commitment to God. I'll read a chapter in Proverbs every day of my life. I have a prayer list, a written prayer list that I pray over every day of my life. There's people in this room that are on my prayer list. And I don't mean trying to make you feel good or anything, but there's people in this room that I pray for every day of my life. And I'll tell you how I know that's true, because I restore the prayer list every day. In other words, I copy it again every day. I copy it, and then I put a check mark when I've prayed for that person. So this isn't I guess I do. I do it. And then another thing, some of the greatest leaders that I've known have had some habits that I thought helped them become great. I'm honestly not original I'm not original enough to come up with any of that smart stuff. So I copy the good ones, and some of my dearest friends have daily habits. These are men that have influenced my life. And so even going to the restaurant, yes, I go 6 days a week. In fact, just a few minutes ago, I got a call from one of my head drinking buddies, and he wanted to know how the convention was going and all. He's a Baptist fella, but he's saved and he loves the Lord and he loves me. But that every day. I don't go in this either, but one of the fellows there at the restaurant told me the other day, he said, "I'm not supposed to tell you this, but he said, the restaurant is throwing a party for you and your wife before you leave." Yeah, I've never known them to throw a party for anybody, But the owner and his wife, I've been to their home. I've had prayer with them. She's got cancer. And so, I befriended them. They'll never come to my church, but they attend a church somewhere. There's certain regiments. Now, you have to also be flexible. I want to be fair to this question, because you've got to be flexible. Somebody calls, somebody's at the hospital, that type of, I have interruptions in my schedule constantly. But I think, if you have a pastor's heart and you love people, you will have interruptions in your schedule. But with that being said, I think there's certain things that it's important, at least for me, so important that I incorporate them in my schedule every day of my life. There's certain prayers that I pray every day of my life. And I'll just go ahead and tell you, nothing's powerful here, but every morning, one of the first prayers that I pray, it's very simple, a biblical prayer. Lord, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. Because I think the things we think and the things we say are really what's going to produce our lives, And so sometimes if I'm awake enough, before my feet hit the floor, I'm saying that prayer. I mean, that's part of I think that there's some disciplines that we need to interject into our life that will give our day some momentum. John Maxwell said to us many times, he said, momentum is your best friend. And we start that momentum early in the morning with those prayers. Another prayer that I pray every single day, and I prayed it today, Lord, make me a blessing to somebody today. It's a simple little prayer, but I mean it. Sure. I want God to help me to be a blessing to somebody every single day of my life. Good. And there's prayers like that. I pray every day, Lord, let the words of my mouth, I told you that. Another one I pray is, Lord, help me to hide your word in my heart that I might not sin against thee. I try to pray scripture as much as I can, and there's some of those I pray them every day. I just pray them every day. You might call it monotonous, but I do it.
That's good.
Talk.
Well, I wasn't thinking. I thought you were doing. For me, the first things I do in the morning after I get up, I have a little devotional by he wrote My Utmost for My Highest. Oswald Chambers, but I've read that. I've used that in devotion, but he has one there's one on the deeper life. It's short, for each day. Noel Scott gave it to me. I think it's written in there in 2010, and it's a deeper life. I read that. It's almost every day. And if I lose it one day, I'd get it the next. And of course, I read the Bible, pray. And I can't say that I go over my whole prayer list every day, but my first prayers are from my family usually. Pray for my kids. We got in our little family, we got over 30, so that's a prayer list already. I could say a few weeks ago as I looked over the congregation, which isn't big, at the Gospel Center, but I looked it over and I seen that I'd prayed for every one of them that morning. And I never want to be preaching to people that I haven't prayed for.
Amen.
I wouldn't do. Of course, I've been a pastor that usually flowed with the tide because it seemed like every time I planned to do something, I'd get a phone call that would change my day. But of course, I'm not into it like I used to be. So I'm getting pretty flexible as I get old.
Don't you love him? I want your shadow to pass over me, brother. Oh, my. That was good. How about another one?
Follow-up question.
So I think all of us have a lot of interruptions, but sometimes you get downtime. Maybe you don't. Every once in a while you get downtime. During that downtime, what's your go-to ministry activity?
Okay. I don't do this every day, but I tell you what I have done at times like that. I've gotten in my pickup truck and started down the road and I said, Lord, where do you want me to go today? Yeah, I've done that. In fact, I did it just before we came north here. I got in the truck and I really didn't know where I was going. I got a lot of places I can go, so it's not really a tough problem. But Lord, help me to visit somebody or meet somebody, or I love a little free time to do that. Don't be impressed. My life is not as structured as it ought to be. Okay, so lest I left the wrong impression. I admire people whose life is structured. I'm not that way. I wish I were, but I'm not that good. But that's a good question. And what I often do, unless I'm reading if I've got a good book I've got going, sometimes I'll resort to that. But if I want to do something instead of read something, I'll jump in my pickup truck and I just head out.
I had something that was very amusing happen to me one morning. A lady called me about 4:15. Now, when I was younger, that was pretty early. Last night I woke up at 1, couldn't go back to sleep till 2. And she said, Brother Mowry, she said, could you take my grandson to a doctor's appointment in Lafayette today? Said he's supposed to be over there at such and such a time. And I said, well, yes. I said, but this is my day to speak in chapel, but if you can't find anybody to do that, you call me back and I'll rearrange my schedule. She said, well, you're the only one we could think of didn't have a job. Some of you guys, you wouldn't tell on yourself like that, would you? I'll tell you what, we've always tried to do our best, even our whole family, to put ministry first. Amen. And my daughters, I had 3 daughters, they went calling with me. And today, one of them is a missionary, one of them is a pastor's wife, and the other one still is working in the church. Amen. We made ministry fun. It wasn't hard. We didn't sit around and talk about what we didn't have. We talked about what we had and how blessed we were and how God helped us. Amen. And ministry was fun. Was there times that we would start on vacation, turn around, come back? Yes. Yes. There was. There was. I remember one time we were on our way and we got a call that certain family had lost their baby. We turned right around. We went up to the hospital and stayed with them and prayed with them, did everything that we needed to do because we put them first. Yes. I have no regrets. No regrets. God's been so good to me.
Praise God.
I'll tell you what, there's often times I look in the mirror and I say, Mark, how in the world was God so good to you? Amen. And have I gone through some battles? Oh, yeah, I've gone through battles like all you preachers. You're not going to satisfy everybody. Jesus didn't. But God's always been faithful. He's always been faithful. We got to stick with it. Stick with it. Amen.
I'd like to answer that question. I'm different. All the time that I pastored across the years, and I heard you can't do it, but I've always had something else going on. I've had a farm for years. We used to have a produce stand in the Lebanon market. We had a roadside stand. We raised a lot of things, produce, and farmed a little and had a few steers, and I just got 8 this morning. And I guess for me, that's the thing that I do, and I have spent some time. And if I want to get away, you can take your pickup truck. I'll take the tractor.
That's good.
Yeah, for something different. But we have tried to work together too. I'm happy that we have one of my sons. He drives bus here, and his family's involved in ministry. And one of my sons and his wife are leaders in the youth group down at the Gospel Center now. And I have a grandson who's a very good preacher. And so I'm glad that members of our family in the work today, and I don't know how it did, it sure was more than me, but thank God for his help.
That's good, man.
Yeah. And Brother Fay didn't tell you, but we had an interest across the years, and he's kind of slipped in and out of it, but we've collected a lot of farm toys.
Oh, yeah. I think everybody ought to have a hobby. You know, I don't think we should be so spiritual that we have no, you know, you ought to be a hunter or a fisherman or a.
Or work on houses.
Yeah, oh yeah, you know, you've got yours. I make gambrels. I've made over 700 deer hanging gambrels, and I've got them all over the United States. Yeah, you got one. There's several people here that have them. Yeah. What I can do, I can go into I have a woodworking shop, and I go in my woodworking shop, and I make these by hand. They're all handmade, and I can feel. You know, President Trump is doing this all the time. I'm telling you. I told him not to do that. Yeah, right. I lost my place. Where was I? Good night. But I can go in my shop and I can just feel my body relax. Really. And I don't mean this as a criticism, but I feel sorry for guys that I've had relatives that when they retired, they had no idea what to do. I mean, you know, if I ever retire, I can't even spell that word, but if I ever do, I've got lots to do. I mean, you know, and I don't mean it boastfully. I'm thankful. I mean, you know what happens when a person retires and they don't have anything to do? They die. That's the next step, you know. And I've known several that have. They had no other interest, and when they stopped their job, you know, I don't know how that got in here, but that's not awfully spiritual, but that's.
You know, I've always heard more people die in bed than any place.
You guys, we want to thank you for helping us today. Let's give them a hand. God bless them. Amen. These guys have been blessed of God, used to God. We love you. God bless you. You're dismissed. Thank you.